In the last 30 years, some wars caught our attention and then disappeared in the disinterested fog of the media. I would like to take you back to the period of the dissolution of Yugoslavia. In all wars, there are facts completely ignored by media for political reasons, or because the drama of the event involves a community of minor importance in a war scenario. But a tragedy involves innocent human beings, and their history cannot be forgotten. This is also the story of other small valleys, villages that have undergone similar events all around the world. Here I want to tell the tragedy of a beautiful valley whose inhabitants and villages were wiped out over the course of 3 days. The Medak pocket in Krajina. What are the Krajinas, and in what context did this rural valley suffer radical ethnic cleansing? The Krajinas were 3 Serbian regions located on the southern, western and eastern borders of Croatia. Kninska Krajina to the south, with the city of Knin. Western Krajina, Slavonia, with the city of Osijek, and Eastern Krajina, with the city of Vukovar, formed the bulwark of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They had been armed over the centuries by the Habsburg Empire to form a defense against the Turkish advance at the bottom of the empire. In fact, Krajina means limes, border. In the geopolitical reorganization decided at Versailles after the First World War, the 3 Serbian areas had been assigned to Croatia within the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, which united 6 nations under the Karađorđević monarchy. At the end of the Second World War, the 6 Yugoslav republics were entrusted to Croatian Tito, Josip Broz, commander of the Yugoslav partisans in the resistance to the Nazis. Tito had formed the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The victorious powers supported Tito's government so that Yugoslavia would serve as a buffer between Western and Eastern Europe. After Tito's death and the end of the Cold War, the United States was the only power left and intended to globally establish US supremacy. The role of Yugoslavia declined. Indeed, it could prove dangerous for the links that Orthodox Serbs had with Russian culture and for their inclination towards socialism. Towards the end of 1980, the United States took the first steps to dissolve Yugoslavia. They cut all investments, through the World Bank imposed the repayment of loans, financed the Croatian far-right parties, and supported the independence demand of the Muslims of Bosnia. In order to be able to act with the consent of the public, the USA started a media campaign against Serbs. To complete the job, CIA agents and other money-backed services invited many politicians and media outlets to support the established narrative. Heavy sanctions were also imposed. Serbs had been chosen as the enemy, guilty because they still believed in the Federation of Yugoslavia, an internationally recognized nation. Serbs proposed as their right a national referendum that had legal value superior to the quick referendums with which the other republics broke away with the consent of the United States and some European countries, changing the borders of Yugoslavia. Serbs were portrayed in the international media as warmongers accused of wanting a greater Serbia. The dissolution of Yugoslavia provided a test for a protocol that was subsequently applied to many other countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Ukraine, and others to come. Let's go back to the Serbian Krajinas. These territories included in the Croatian nation. In 1990, the Croatian government formulated a new constitution according to which all citizens of ethnicity and religion other than Croatian were foreigners, and therefore lost all the rights that had enjoyed as Yugoslav citizens for over half a century. The new Croatian constitution had obtained the recognition of Germany on Christmas Day 1991. On January 15, 1992, the Vatican did as well. Then the European countries followed. In anticipation of this international acceptance, the Krajinas had decided to come together and form the Republika Srpska of Krajina. The inhabitants would have agreed to remain in Croatia, but only in the context of a Yugoslav federation. They refused to remain in Croatia as second-degree citizens. Soon after the first Croatian provocations, armed clashes followed. It must be remembered that after the break with Russia in 1948, in former Yugoslavia, all male citizens were militiamen, and after military service they brought their rifles home to defend their village, city, region in case of need, as Switzerland does. Soon, from piloted provocations, the clashes turned into civil war with Croatia. Meanwhile, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croats and Muslims confronted Serbs, who in turn, being 35% of the population, had refused to accept the organized referendum without their consent and a Muslim government, as for the same reasons the Krajina Serbs did. They had in turn created the Republika Srpska of Bosnia. As foreseen by the dissolution plan of the Yugoslav Federation with the onset of clashes, the United States pressed the United Nations to form an interposition force made up of armies of NATO, member countries, and other nations willing to collaborate. In reality, it was a way to settle NATO in conflict zones. UNPROFOR, United Nations Protection Force, settled in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Krajina to intervene between the warring enclaves. The command passed in rotation from the Canadian to the British to the French military. When it was the French turn, General Morillon promised Muslims to create protected areas called pink zones, where in theory there should have been no armed groups. Consequently, the pink zone was extended to all areas that were in the same situation as the city of Srebrenica. The Krajinas were among the protected areas as established by the general. Medak Pocket was a delightful valley inhabited by farmers. At that time, young people were absent for work or enlisted in the militia. Only the elderly had remained home to guard the houses and cattle. In September 1993, the fighting seemed to have slowed into a promising but illusory pause. Just a technique to ease attention. When the Croatian army attacked, evidently with the silent approval of some Western powers, the Kenyan UNPROFOR units protecting the Medak area withdrew in good order. UNPROFOR, to balance the situation, sent the special troops of the 2nd Canadian Battalion, Princess Patricia. Surprisingly, the Canadians found themselves confronted with a real battle, also supported by heavy weapons. From the 15th to the 21st September, clashes and tiring negotiations followed, and finally they managed to bring the Croatian troops back within their border. The Canadians suffered some losses that passed in the absolute silence of the international and Canadian media, surprisingly. This video was shot by a Serbian TV operator from Krajina, where TV video archives no longer exist. Before the images fade, like the memory of this story, we show you what was filmed during a 2-day visit in the Medak pocket, a month after the attack on the villages, where we could still smell the odor of burning and gunpowder. A few days later, on the 9th of September 1993, Croatian elite troops filtered into the Medak pocket, despite this being a pink zone protected area. In 3 days, they wiped out the villages of Medak, Čitluk, Srnići, Vojnovići, Radakovići, Počitelji, Divoselo, and others, located in the beautiful valley, exterminating their inhabitants. The destruction had been total. After a month walking among the houses destroyed by mines, we could still smell the smoke and see the carcasses of the cows burned alive in the stables with the chains still around their necks. One village after another, the houses had been blown up one by one. Among the fragments of crushed rubble and furnishings stood the economic stove. It was the only visible object, as a monument to an erased everyday life. The destruction was even more conspicuous and cruel because the surrounding vegetation was rich and the wall gardens showed flowers and plants, the result of a careful care. Cats, chickens roamed the ruins. The partially intact houses had been completely robbed of door frames or other removable elements as common war prey. The dogs that had not been killed returned hopefully from the fields where they had hidden. When they were hearing a human presence, they cautiously steered clear if they didn't recognize people. The invaders had left their signature written on the walls of some houses. At the end of the 3 days of ethnic cleansing, the inhabitants of the valley had all been killed. The victims were about 120, men and women, and about 20 soldiers. The youngest victim among the inhabitants of the valley was 62 years old. The Polish UNPROFOR unit was camped in the village of Divoselo, near the border to form a buffer between Croats and Serbs. In the dilapidated community house, bronze plaques bearing the names of the victims of the two world wars could still be seen on the crumbling walls. They were the same as the victim of this incursion. The UNPROFOR civil police investigation found it to be a war crime. On the 1st October 1993, the UN Special Commissioner for Human Rights, Tadeusz Mazowiecki, sent a letter to the Croatian Foreign Minister Matej Granic, requesting that the guilty be found and punished according to international law. After some time, the Croatian minister nominated 2 Croatian army officers as responsible. One was a Muslim. Later, this latter, Agim Ceku, a Kosovar Albanian, after having militated in the UCK ranks, in 2006 will become Prime Minister of Kosovo. The Krajinas had always suffered the bloodiest ethnic cleansing in every conflict that had opposed Croats and Serbs. But at the end of each war, the latter obstinately rebuilt houses and families and then suffered the same fate in the following war. On the 1st May 1995, the Croatian Regular Army, prepared and armed by American generals belonging to the well-known private agency Military Professional Resources, Inc., MPRI, and with the help of the U.S. Secret Service for the blockade of telecommunications, attacked Western Slavonia in force with heavy vehicles and airplanes, surprising the population with flash operation. L3MPRI was based in Alexandria, Virginia, and founded in 1987 by 7 retired American generals. It was part of the E-Communications Group, specialized in military supplies, and was listed on the New York Stock Exchange with a turnover of over $100 million a year. This organization is able to mobilize 10,000 specialists in a few days, including former members of the Special Anti-Guerrilla Corps. As we read on internet, their best client is the U.S. Department of Defense. On the morning of the 5th August 1995, the Croatian army attacked Kninska Krajina with the support of the usual American advisors and mercenaries. Storm operation carried out the ethnic cleansing by military hand of the Republic of Srpska of Krajina. An endless queue of tractors and other vehicles took the road to Bosnia, pursued and bombed by the attackers. 250,000 people left their homes, their fields, forever. After the Dayton Peace, Eastern Krajina passed to the Croatian state. The Krajinas no longer exist today.